name is Deborah Maclaren and I'm the MD of Love Reading for Kids. And I am delighted to welcome you today to this celebratory event for the 2023 Branford Boase Award. The Branford Boase is awarded annually to an outstanding first novel, to a first-time writer of a book for young people. At the same time, it uniquely marks the important contribution of the editor in identifying and nurturing new talent. As part of this event today, I am going to be speaking to Julia Eccleshare, co-founder of the prize and chair of judges. I'm going to speak to one of the judges, Sajeda and Amir, and we're going to talk about the 8 shortlisted titles. And then I'm very excited to be chatting to the winning author and editor. So stay with us. Well, I am delighted this morning to welcome Julia Eccleshare to this celebratory event for the 2023 Branford Boase Awards. Julia is a regular contributor to the Radio 4's Front Row and Open Book programmes. She is the Children's Director of Hay, a long-time friend and contributor to Love Reading for Kids, where she selects her Julia picks each month. And alongside many hats, I don't know how she sleeps, Julia is also chair of judges for the Branford Boase. Julia, welcome to this event.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to be here.
It's great to see you. It's great to see you. What I would love to do is if you could share with us what is so special about the Branford Boase Award and what it means to you, because I know it has a special place in your heart, doesn't it?
Yeah, it absolutely does. And, you know, you pushing me on that spot, it's kind of always makes me very emotional because the Branford Boase came out of a very sad situation. The author, Henrietta Branford, won the Guardian Children's Book Prize for a magnificent book, Fire, Bed and Bone. I mean, who would have thought of talking about the peasants' revolt through the eyes of a dog? I mean, you know, that's original writing. And very soon after she'd won, in fact, even when she won, she knew, and I went down to visit her and she told me she'd got cancer, which was really obviously terminal. And I went to visit her in hospital later than that. And she was, you know, quite near the end by that point. And she said she wanted some kind of legacy of her work to be about getting new writers into the hands of children, because she thought children were reading not enough contemporary fiction, but were reading, you know, they didn't know enough. Well, they didn't know enough about what was around. And now it's a very dangerous thing to promise somebody something that you don't know that you'll be able to deliver, but also it's a very humbling thing to be tasked with it. And then coincidentally, the editorial director at Walker Books, Wendy Bowes, also died of cancer. And we just felt, I was very lucky, I teamed up with Anne Marley, who was the head of Children's Library Services in Hampshire, and was an absolutely brilliant children's librarian, you know, the head of the pack of these great people who shaped children's reading really for a generation. And we decided the thing to do was to set up a first novel prize. And we were very lucky because Walker Books very generously sponsored it from the beginning, not only in terms of money, but much more giving us the sort of support we needed to get it going. Now, where we are now, so many years on, a debut children's books prize doesn't seem so remarkable because debut authors are celebrated all the time. And in fact, I think if we were to set it up in 2023, we'd be doing mid-career. We would be trying to find an award to keep authors going longer, because I think there's a great danger of people starting and then not necessarily being able to fulfill their you know, the pressures of getting to a big market are maybe too much for them to have time to grow into the authors they might become. But at the time, there were very few submissions. The first lot of submissions was under 20. Publishers were not investing in new authors. It wasn't an area you could get much publicity. And we were a bit in the doldrums with it. Mm-hmm. And so the combination of this very emotional starting point for it, but then also hitting something which turned out to be, you never know whether it was a trend or whether, I mean, publishers we do know do publish for prizes. So we don't know whether the fact of the prize encouraged publishers to create more debut novels or whether it just was in the air that we needed more new writing. And honestly, it's one of the most, just reading just new authors. I mean, obviously I read a lot of new authors all the time in the run of things, in the mix of things. But when you just consider them as an entity and you think, why are people, and you go through that process of thinking, why in this year are we having this many books about X or Y or whatever? And they really have been, for me. I mean, I always think that my children's reading has been a chart through social life over the years. But I mean, I came across trans children in YA fiction years before it began to be a big thing in conversation, because children's authors are always at the cutting edge of the things that are preoccupying young readers and the authors who are in touch with that cohort. And there are some writers who aren't doing that. Obviously, you know, if you're writing a kind of, you know, high fantasy, you're probably not thinking about those things so much. But an awful lot of authors are very close to childhood. They're either teaching or they've got children of the right age. So they're doing that very clever thing of remembering what it felt like to be a child from their own experience, but also mapping that onto contemporary children's experience. So reading for the BBA, you have all of that. You have wonderful fantasy. We've read some fantastic fantasies, and fantasy is an extraordinarily enduring genre. And you always think there can't be a new way of telling this story, but blow me down, there is.
Find it.
Find it. And that's exciting. Hearing new voices is exciting. I mean, you know, we now obviously everybody is always looking for new voices. We've been trying to look for new voices. You know, that's what the job is really, to find new writers and new ways of writing. And we're so proud of the authors that we've found and helped, and we haven't made them, they've made themselves. But being on the BBA list has been a great accolade. And then for the winners, obviously, it's an amazing thing to feel that your work has been given this particular praise.
It's incredible. And you're right. I mean, this is the 24th year, isn't it? 24th year of the prize. And you think of the roster of the award winners over that time, and it's the great and the good of winners.
And you look at someone like, I mean, I remember reading, just to take one example, it's very invidious to pick out an example, but to take the example of Meg Rosoff, when I read How I Live Now, I mean, I just remember just knowing with that, you know, when you read something and you know you want to give it to somebody else.
Yes.
I just thought it was such an extraordinarily special book because of the way she wrote it and what she was saying, and she didn't sort of have any boundaries to what she felt she could express. And you just think, wow, look what happened to Meg Rosoff, you know, won the Carnegie Medal. I mean, it's great. It's been really amazing. But there are many. I mean, as I said, I shouldn't really pick out one. There are many, all of them. And every author is different. That's what's so interesting. You know, I remember hearing Jenny Downham talking about her writing and her saying, it's one of the things that stuck with me for a long time was she said she'd been an actress before. And that was a huge asset when wanting to write, because you knew how to inhabit other characters. It was like a little light bulb moment for me.
Yeah, I love that.
So it's been for me, I mean, you know, there is not a moment of it that hasn't been very enriching for me, as well as knowing that it is actually helping the authors.
Absolutely.
And the editors. That's I didn't say that the really special thing about Branford Boase. Well, I mean, the special thing is the authors in the sense that they get the sort of, you know, their book is out there. But the other thing that we definitely wanted to celebrate, because of it also being for Wendy Boase, is the role of the editor, because having worked in publishing, I'm without doubt know that no book comes without the help of a very good editorial hand. And the relationships that an author has with their first editor is a very, very powerful one. And so we feel they've had such a hand in this, and it's been lovely to celebrate them. And again, we've got editors who've won more than once. We've had editors who started out by winning the Branford Boase and gone on to edit other great books. You know, it's been, again, and I think for them, because they're such unsung heroes, they never get any mention anywhere except now in the acknowledgements, because everyone has to put them in. But they really, really, and again, that's a lovely thing about reading it for this prize, because you read the submissions and you think, that's interesting. That's what that editor's looking for. You know,
that's what's so, I think, amazing to me. And it was only when I started, you know, having these chats and being involved with the Branford Boase that I realised, and we've had the opportunity to interview the last couple of winners, and you realise how important that relationship is, because you're right. And you said unsung heroes, and I was going to use those exact words. No one really talks about the editors. You know, it's like, and this is such a brilliant opportunity for the editors to shine, and for people to hear about that really intrinsic collaborative relationship that happens when the magic happens, and when, you know, in some cases the editor takes it from good to great, you know, by tweaks and by working together.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. We will be talking later to the winner and the winning author and the winning editor of the 2023 Branford Boase. So you had a long list of 21 this year, and the judges have chosen to shortlist 8. I mean, you mentioned before about how over the years the themes have changed as society has changed, as things have come to the fore. Have there been anything particular, any themes or observations about this year's shortlist in general you'd like to share?
Not really. We thought it was a very interesting, very wide-ranging one. I mean, yes, there are some obvious themes like the climate emergency is bound to come up in children's fiction at the moment. It'd be surprising if it didn't. A lot of diverse children's books, which has been great, and looking at different ways of telling stories for children who haven't typically found themselves in books. That's been a great thing. Some wonderful fantasy. We don't want to read any more books which have to identify that it was the time of the pandemic and mum's been working at home and dad's just wearing a shirt and pajama bottoms, but it's going to keep coming up. I mean, we've just got to get through it. But it's funny, it just doesn't read very well. I mean, I know you want to make sure the book is clearly placed, but actually those are details we can live without. But on the other hand, it's good that it's there because it is part of those children's experience. It did change their lives because suddenly mum was at home much more than she'd ever been. And that has good and bad effects. So, that's to be expected. I don't think there was anything very specific we could say about this year. I mean, I think what we felt was a huge sense of congratulations really to the publishers and the writers for keeping going through a quite challenging period when nobody did quite know what was going on. And so, I mean, we just thought it was a very good, strong year. I mean, I think what I always feel is that you look at, I mean, we had something like, we had between 40 and 50 submissions. We had a lot of submissions. And then you narrow it down and the long list is, very important. But what I feel for all the authors it's a horrible process. I mean, I don't like it in that sense because you start with 21 people who might be in with it and then you have your shortlist and then you get your one winner. And I think what I want all authors to go away feeling is it's amazing to have got even onto the shortlist, the long list, let alone the shortlist. It's, you have been selected out of, what is it now, 12,000 children's
12,000 children's books.
It's an amazing accolade.
Yeah, it is. It's incredible. And you had, Anning, a brilliant team of judges again this year. Obviously, Maisie Chan, who won the 2022 Branford Boase, with Danny Chung, does not do maths, which I adored. You had Joanne Owen, who is one of our editorial experts, but is a writer and of children's books herself, alongside many other hats. You had Darren Matthews from the Centre for Literacy in Primary Education, and you had Sajeda Amir, who is a secondary English teacher at a high school in Manchester, and I'm speaking to her later about the shortlist. So talk us through that judging process, and I'd love to understand what sort of criteria you look for in the submissions when deciding on who makes it to the next stage.
What we like. We don't really have a criteria. We don't have a rule book. I mean, and we have, obviously a panel to make the decisions because reading is so much made by the reader and their personal tastes, and it'd be awful if it was sort of just one person saying this is it. The judges were fantastic, and it was lovely because we met in person. I know that's my reference to the movies.
Yeah,
but honestly, judging something when you're on miles away on Zoom is not the same. Judging in a room is fantastic. Darren brought great wisdom from his experience as a teacher and a trainer of teachers, and he's got a huge sort of breadth in children's literature, and that was very helpful. Sajeda was fantastically passionate about working in the classroom, about the importance of books, about what worked for the girls she taught. And I mean, she was completely amazing as well in bringing a slightly different thing. And Maisie was great because having somebody who won last year gives us an insight into what it felt like to have won. And Joanne, like me, reads a lot. And so she's got a wide range to come from.
Yeah, no, it's brilliant. It's brilliant. So yes, I'm really looking forward to speaking to Sajeda later, and she's going to talk us through the shortlist and what the panel thought of each of the books, and then we'll be announcing this year's prize. Julia, thank you so much for joining us today and for sharing your wisdom. It's always lovely to chat.
Well, it's always lovely to chat, and it's also lovely to talk about the prize. So thank you for giving me this opportunity.
Not at all. Thanks so much. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. So thank you so much, Julia. It is always an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Now we have Sajeda Amir with us, who is an English teacher and Key Stage 3 coordinator at Levenshume High School for Girls in Manchester. Sajeda has been one of this year's judges, and she's here today to talk to us about the process of the Branford Boase Awards, what it's like to be a judge, and she's going to talk us through the shortlist and then announce the winner. Oh, how exciting. Sajeda,
hi, Deborah.
welcome.
So nice to be here. Thank you. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so happy to talk to you about the Branford Boase. It has been the highlight of my year this year.
Brilliant. That's just so fab to hear. So what would be brilliant if you could talk us through the process of being part of it as a judge, how it came about and what it's looked like for you?
So last year I worked with the CLP on the Clipper Award with my students. My students performed at the Clipper last year in London. And that's how I got to know Andrea, and Andrea got in touch with me and asked whether I'd be happy to be a judge. And I said, absolutely, I would absolutely love to do it. And so once the long list had been announced, we started getting the books through the post. And so we had a couple of months to read the long list. Once we read the long list, making copious amounts of notes as we do, we had a meeting to decide the shortlist. And this was really, really interesting because beforehand, what we'd done is we'd rated the books in order of preference and whatnot. And it was interesting to see which books from the long list we'd all kind of selected. Anyway, so during the shortlist meeting, we talked about all of the books and talked about how wonderful they were, what a brilliant selection they were, and obviously had a conversation about all of the books and then came to the agreement on the shortlist. It was about 3 to 4 hours, I think it was. We were there. So yeah, quite a long discussion. And then we decided on the shortlist of the books. Once the shortlist had been decided, we decided to go back and do a reread. Obviously, on a reread, you always pick up things that you might not do on a first read, and you might come at it from a different perspective. So we read the books again on the shortlist, made notes again, and then met to decide the winner. Again, this was a pretty long conversation, talking about all of the books, and it was quite intense, but it was so fruitful, and it was so interesting to see how the different judges came at the books and the different perspectives we bring to reading. Obviously, reading is so subjective, and how everyone feels towards a book is different. But it was interesting to see that we felt quite familiar about some of the books. And it was in that meeting then that we decided on our winner.
Oh, that's brilliant. It's brilliant. And the thing is, it's so tough, isn't it? Because you've got this, I mean, even to get to the long list is amazing. And you're looking at the quality. I mean, I'm a judge for another prize at the moment, and it's so difficult because all the books are so different, aren't they? So it's like comparing apples and pears.
Exactly. Yeah.
and actually, I think all it comes down to is how does it make you feel? How do we think children will relate to this?
Relate to it. Absolutely.
And that's just what you've got to go with at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it's fascinating. And so was it, in terms of the shortlist, so there were 8 books on the shortlist, were there? And you're going to talk us through in a moment. But was it a challenge even getting to the shortlist? I mean, I've got no idea how we're going to pick a winner out of, this other.
Yes.
Just like, have no idea.
We did. There were some books on the long list, and we found it really difficult to say, right, we'll have to put this one forward, put this one to the side. It was really difficult coming to that decision. But ultimately, like you say, it came down to how our young people would react to the book.
Yeah.
And the conversations were really intense. It came down to even like such nuanced conversation. The title, the front cover, and
Yeah.
minute details, and that's essentially how we came to our decision. We looked at the minute details that would,
Yeah.
in order to kind of really push that shortlist forward.
And what has the whole package? It's like what has the whole package,
Yeah,
and I think
exactly.
that's exactly it. And I know all of the shortlisted books were phenomenal. So
They were absolutely phenomenal. Yeah.
really strong. So with obviously your day job, when you're not being a judge, you are a teacher.
That's right, yeah.
So how has being a teacher impacted your judging? Have you shared all of the books with your students, and did that impact how you related?
I think, being a teacher was, I guess, like a plus point for me. Whilst I was judging, I came at it from the perspective of my students. How would my students react to the books? Essentially, like I was thinking about readability, and how would my students respond to each of these books? And that was at the forefront of every book that I read. And I was thinking about how would they respond, how would they feel about it? Would it speak to them? The demographic that I teach in, especially, is I teach in inner city Manchester, South Manchester, and reading for pleasure is at the forefront of everything that we do in school, and pushing that with our students is really important. So yeah, being part of this was absolutely a plus point for me. Push the books in school with our students. There is a queue for all of the books at the library at the minute because the shortlist was announced and we plugged all the books in school. And it was so exciting because our librarians are absolutely phenomenal, absolutely fantastic. They are so on top of the new books, the new young adult books that are out. They plug those really well with our students. There's always all the new books in our library. So yeah, I feel really privileged to work there and really privileged that I got to be a part of this as well. So yeah, absolutely. Being a teacher and being able to share this with my students has been really, really exciting.
Oh, that's brilliant. They must have loved it as well. They must have loved
Yeah,
it.
yeah. So
I went to my daughter's new secondary school last night. She had a taste day and there was a parents' evening. And
oh yeah,
and I was sort of looking around the library again, and you just think, honestly, the schools that have great libraries and great librarians, it's so important.
absolutely. It's such a privilege.
It is a privilege, and we are part of a lot of the campaigns out there. The Great School Libraries campaign. Every school deserves a library, and
absolutely,
can't underestimate.
100%.
Yeah, it's just
exactly the importance of reading.
Yeah, absolutely. So a shout out to all of our teachers who push reading for pleasure. A shout out to all of our librarians who get books in the hands of our children. It is everything. It's everything.
So, everything it is.
So, right, let's talk through the shortlist.
Right, okay then.
If you could just take us through a little synopsis of each of the books.
I will do. So I have them handy here with me. So I'm going to start off with The Bones of Me. And this is set in the East End of London. And our main character dreams of becoming a brother, essentially, is her hero in this book. And also her trainer, he trains her to become a boxer. And he is accused of a crime and she believes that he did not do it. And she sets out on proving his innocence. It's a great book, and we love the fact that it was written in both prose and poetry. And, hybrid verse novels are, I think, really important in terms of structure, in terms of writing. And I think, for young people to access writing like that is really important. And yes, we love the fact that it explores themes of identity growing up. I think it's a really powerful coming of age story. It's a very brave story, and we're really excited about what the author is going to do next.
That's brilliant. The verse thing, I think, is so important. We push a lot of verse novels because I think it, for reluctant readers and for, for maybe kids that would see themselves as a non-reader, it's so much more accessible, isn't it?
Absolutely, really, really accessible. And we are, and in our school especially, we're thinking of introducing verse novels more into our curriculum, moving away, from traditional writing, as it were. Because they're really exciting, really interesting.
Love it. Brilliant.
Okay, our next book is The Eternal Return of Clara Hart. So this is a time loop novel, very similar to like a Groundhog Day theme. And in this book, Spence relives the same day repeatedly whilst trying to prevent the death of his classmate, Clara Hart. And it occurs at a party that they both attend. And the reader is left asking whether Spence is going to be able to prevent the terrible events that occur during this party. And we were blown away by the fact that the skill that the writer employs while Spence relives the same day. No day is the same, and those small nuanced details are absolutely beautiful. Those subtle changes that alter the course of what happens. And I think, we love the fact that this book is extremely relevant to our young people today. And I know that is going to spark so much interest.
Yeah, definitely. I think the it's really interesting as well, some of the complexities of gender relations as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think this was I read it really fast, this one. It was
so did I. Yeah.
Really fast paced, isn't it?
Yeah. Very topical. I loved it. I thought it was absolutely beautiful. But yes, okay, so this is our next one. So this is Seed. And this book of wonder, I call it, tells the story of Marty and his complicated life, slightly more aimed towards our younger readers. But I think it covers some really, really important topics and certainly accessible for our younger readers as well. So Marty's mother suffers with depression, and he finds himself spending time at the allotment with his slightly eccentric grandfather, who gives him a seed on his birthday. Now, this seed is magical and it grows, and whilst that seed grows, so does the novel's ability to cast a spell on the reader. I was absolutely mesmerized by this book. And I think what we loved as judges was the premise of the story, which is like igniting hope. I think it really does that. It's lovely, it's wondrous, and I think it's hugely accomplished. I loved it. Really, really loved it.
I did as well. I read this when it first came out, and it's just, like you said, it's joyous, and it's like a bit magical. It's about hope. It's about the power of the imagination and believing in the impossible. It's
absolutely, I love that. Absolutely gorgeous.
And so this is more 9+, 11+, whereas obviously the other couple we've talked about are more 13+ YA, aren't they?
That's right. Yeah. Okay, our next book is Rebel Skies. This book is absolutely beautiful. It's a magical debut that brings to life our vivacious character, Kurara. It's a really interesting book that brings to life paper origami, burning sky cities. Now, Kurara is a crafter who can manipulate paper with her mind, and she can create creatures almost like as if they're alive. And she's taken under the wing of an expert crafter, Himura, who helps her to save her best friend, Haru. We love the fact that this story is so beautifully crafted. And essentially it's a fight between good and evil, isn't it?
It is. It is. And I love. I think the thing on the cover says "one girl against an empire," and I think my daughter's too young for this, but I think it's the sort of book she will love. She loves anything inspired. She's mixed race. She's like anything to do with Asian culture. It's really inspired by Asian culture, isn't it?
It's funny that you mentioned your daughter and how she'd love it, because my daughter read the shortlist alongside me. My daughter is 12, and this was her favourite book from all of the books. Yes, she read the entire shortlist with me. She absolutely loved this, and so her present over the 6 weeks holidays is going to be the new book. I think that's released soon. So yeah, she
actually. Oh yeah,
absolutely
because
loved
this
it.
is part of a trilogy, isn't it?
Yes,
Sorry,
that's right. Yeah,
this is
yeah.
part of the trilogy,
Trilogy, yeah.
and yeah, I think there's a
There's
new one called Rebel
yeah,
Fire.
double fires. Yeah, absolutely. And so my daughter absolutely loved this. She thought it was so innovative, so different to what
Yeah,
she's read before.
yeah,
And yeah, uh, as judges, what we loved was the world building that has gone into this. You
yeah,
know, it was absolutely phenomenal. The world building is slick and
yeah,
filmic, and I think it's really going to enthrall readers.
yeah.
Really, really beautiful.
Yeah, and it's no, I really enjoyed it. And as I was reading, I was like, my daughter, give her another year or so, she will love
Yeah.
it.
So our next book is The Cats We Meet Along the Way.
Oh, I love
Again,
this book.
really, really beautiful. We absolutely adored this book.
Yeah,
So this is a pre-apocalyptic novel that takes the reader on a journey across beautiful Malaysia. And that's one of the things that we loved about the book, that we
yeah,
get to experience the beauty of Malaysia.
yeah.
And yeah, absolutely gorgeous. Our main character is called Aisha. She's in search of her sister. And along with her mother, her boyfriend, and her boyfriend's parents, Aisha undertakes the journey. And on this journey, we really see the themes of love, connection, and the fragility of the world around us coming through.
Mm,
We love the fact that the author is so skilled at balancing out Aisha's frustration and anger, at the
yeah,
injustice of the situation with genuine hope for what the
yeah,
future could hold.
yeah.
Even in light of such a cataclysmic event that is looming. Yeah, absolutely beautiful. We really, really love this. Absolutely gorgeous book.
It's just it. I just think the characters in it, the characterization, you
Yeah,
just really fall in love. They're so endearing, aren't they? And
yeah,
that
really,
story
really
of
endearing.
family finding
Yeah,
their way through like loss and
yeah,
loneliness to really sort of
yeah,
find what's important, what matters
yeah.
to
And
them.
I love the fact that Aisha is such a relatable character.
Yeah,
Her anger is palpable on the page.
yeah, yeah,
And you can understand that frustration that she holds at what's going to happen. But yeah,
yeah.
absolutely beautiful,
It's
really lovely.
gorgeous. It's gorgeous. It's from a small indie publisher called Duppy Books, and
Yeah,
I'm so delighted for them. This is a triumph of a book, and I think it won the Waterstones
absolutely.
Children's
It
Prize as
did,
well
yeah,
this year, didn't
it
it?
did, yeah. Very well
So,
deserved, I
yeah,
add. Yeah,
absolutely. And
lovely.
so this is another 13 plus YA
That's
read.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Our next book on the list is Ellie Pillai is Brown. The eponymous Ellie is a quirky teenager who's in search of her identity and trying to find her place in the world. It's a genuinely heartwarming coming of age story. Ellie and her brilliant taste in music comes face to face with the pressures of being a daughter of immigrants and living up to what she believes, are their expectations. She suffers from the pangs of first love and best friend issues. And what we loved about the story was that it's so cleverly plotted. It's treated with warmth and sensitivity.
Yeah.
And what we loved about the book was that it comes with a gorgeous soundtrack
Yeah.
by the multi-talented author. It's a genuine delight to listen to. I'm currently listening to it on Spotify. It's my soundtrack that I listen to on the way to work. I think it's absolutely gorgeous, and
It's
yeah, it's
beautiful.
absolutely beautiful book. Really, really beautiful.
It
Like I
is.
said, brilliant, brilliant coming of age story. Something that
Yeah.
more people will be able to relate to.
Definitely, definitely. And I think it talks about the soundtrack of her life, doesn't it? And
Yeah,
you
yeah,
just, I didn't have my Spotify far away from me
yeah.
all the way through it.
Listen to the music.
It's
Um,
gorgeous, but
really,
it's funny as well, isn't it? It's,
it is. It
it
is.
covers
It's
some
very
really,
humorous. Yeah,
intense themes, but it's
yeah.
funny.
It is. And our character she's so quirky, isn't
Yeah,
she?
she is. Yeah,
She's so funny. And I love the fact that she can laugh at herself. I think that's
yeah.
really important. But yeah,
I
beautiful
think
book.
for anyone who has ever felt they don't fit in,
Yeah,
or they're
yeah,
not sure who they are or what they want to be or who they want to be, and
yeah. This is the
this
book.
book will
Yeah,
really speak to them.
yeah. It can resonate with them, won't it? It certainly did with me.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So
It's
our next book is The Haunting of Tyrese Walker. Again, beautiful book. So Tyrese, our main character, goes to visit Jamaica in this novel while struggling with the death of his father. I love the fact that we get to travel to Jamaica with him. I think it's absolutely beautiful, a beautiful place. I love the fact that there's, psychological realism and horror are seamlessly entwined and developed excellently throughout the book. And I love the fact that we get to see a lot of Jamaican folklore that's embedded within the novel that helps Tyrese to explore his grief. And as judges said, it would be challenging to picture this book done in any other environment. So, it's a testament to how well the book is written. And it will leave the reader questioning, whether Tyrese is actually losing his grip on reality or whether he's actually being haunted. And we were riveted with this book, and we're really excited about what the author is going to do next. It's when I was growing up, the horror books that I read were, Point Horror and Goosebumps, and those kind of horror books. This is a true horror book. It was genuinely, I found, quite terrifying because it had that psychological realism aspect. So I think it's really, really cleverly done. Really, really well written.
Yeah, the like blood sucking and the shape shifting and the witch-like creatures.
Really quite scary. But
I think as well, I felt like there was a real light and dark with it. The sort of like the darkness of all the chilling horror stuff. But then there's a lot of light, and like Grammy is just a fab character. The wisdom of Grammy.
She's wonderful. She's absolutely wonderful. When she talks to him about the guppies, I had to laugh, but at the same time, I was like, "Put the rice out, Tyrese."
Absolutely. So if you've got a child who loves a bit of horror, likes a bit of terror. This is fab. And this is for 11 plus and 13 plus, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Great.
Our last book on the shortlist is The Map of Leaves. And I've said this about all the books, but again, beautiful book, really, really well written. And we really enjoyed it. So this book is about our main character, who's called Orla. And Orla she's really well developed. But the amazing thing about her is that she can talk to and hear plants around her. And it's a gift that her mother has passed on to her and that she treasures. I love the fact that it's like a classic whodunit that gets a new ecological facade, both timely and relevant. I love that ecological aspect to the book. I think it was really, really very topical, like I say. The characterization of Orla is brave, I think. She can be a character who can be quite rude and quite coarse. And at the same time, is so determined and so brave. And she's on this frantic hunt for this sickness, for a cure for this sickness that's infecting both plants and animals. And along the way, she learns the art of friendship. And as judges, we're really looking forward to seeing what new and unusual novels our author will bring our way next. But we love the ecological aspects of this book. Very timely, very really relevant, very topical.
It's gorgeous, isn't it? And I think it's that whole thing around the solution to the village's predicament lies in nature and the ports respecting nature rather than exploiting it. And it's I think it's a really beautiful message.
Really beautiful.
And the thing that we loved as well was the way each chapter heading incorporates the name of a plant and its use.
Yes, and its use,
It's clever, isn't it? It's clever.
Very clever, really clever.
It's really lovely. So if it's a great eco adventure. And
like
I wasn't aware of this book at all until it reached the shortlist, and and I was like, yes. It's so important, and let's remember this prize is about finding new voices. And
absolutely, and I think this shortlist does just that. We've got some independent publishers on here. I think which is really, really important. Beautiful.
Brilliant, amazing. Listen, thank you so much for sharing those with us.
Pleasure.
And now I know some people watching this will already know. For those that don't, it would be great if you could just talk us through the winner of the 2023 Branford Boase.
Well, I am just going to start with saying that, this shortlist was an absolute delight to read. All 8 books on the shortlist, are phenomenal. And, at our final meeting as judges, we were all in agreement that if this shortlist is anything to go by, then our young people are so very lucky that they've got such talented authors at the forefront right now. Having said that, I am absolutely delighted to announce that the 2023 Branford Boase Award winner is Ellie Pillai is Brown. Absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous book. Like I said, when I first read this, it struck me so deeply because I felt like the writer was writing for 16-year-old Sajeda. That's how I felt when I read it. The characters are written with such integrity, and Ellie's so relatable in all of her quirkiness. Also her music taste is absolutely brilliant. And at the same time, I thought, the secondary plot of, second generation immigrants is treated with sensitivity, with warmth, and it really opens the reader's eyes to what it feels like for someone to feel like, what it feels like to be stuck between 2 cultures. Certainly, as I was growing up, I felt like that. And I feel like a lot of our readers will be able to empathize, and if not sympathize, with Ellie's predicament. But at the same time, she's so humorous, Ellie, and I love the fact that she can laugh at herself. And, it's like I say, absolutely beautiful. It's such a worthy winner, I believe, because, I know it's a book that I'm going to go back to again and again and again. Certainly a book that I will be recommending, to all our students, our young people. My daughters, I think my daughters will absolutely love it. So
and adults will love it. I said to my husband, who actually will resonate with this character. He is a music fanatic, and actually grew up in, as a brown boy in a very white part of Kent, and really struggled with that otherness growing up. And I said to him last night, I was like, you have to, I know it's a children's book, but it's a YA book, and you will absolutely love it. Like everyone could read this book and really enjoy it. It's absolutely
enjoy it and learn something. I think Ellie's a great teacher. I think she's a brilliant character that we can learn from. And that soundtrack, isn't it just gorgeous?
It's amazing. I mean, Christine Pillenaigan, apologies, Christine, who wrote the book, is multi-talented, and she wrote, she did it all, and I think we're going to see great things from her.
Yeah, I'm so excited for her, and I'm so looking forward to seeing what she does next.
Absolutely.
I said to my daughter, I can easily see this becoming like, a Netflix film or something like that. It's absolutely brilliant, isn't it? I absolutely love it.
It is. Fantastic. Sajeda, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute
for having me, Deborah.
Joy. It's been a joy. You take care, and thanks for joining us, and we'll see you again soon. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
So now I am super, super excited to welcome Christine Pillenaigan and Leah Thaxton. And we're going to chat about the 2023 winner of the Branford Boase, Ellie Pillai is Brown, published by Faber. Huge congratulations.
Thank you very much. Very excited.
Thank you. Really, really delighted. I mean, Julie and I were discussing earlier that actually, when we consider there are 12,000 books, children's books being published every year, so actually just to be longlisted for an award is a brilliant achievement, but you've done one better and won this. So how does it feel? Christine, I'll start with you. How does it feel?
I mean, it feels absolutely amazing. I genuinely don't think I've ever won anything before. So it only took me 42 2 years. But yeah, it's really, really exciting. It's a book that's so kind of close to my heart and so kind of important to me in terms of who it speaks to. So to win for this particular book as well just feels really kind of powerful. So it means a lot. I'm hugely excited about it.
Brilliant. Leah, what's it mean to you?
It's such an honour. I mean, it's the only prize that acknowledges an editor. I've been shortlisted before. I've seen many brilliant editors go up on that stage, and I'm thrilled. I also feel a bit of a fraud because Christine is the real deal, and I feel I've done very little to make this book, what it is today. But yeah, I'm overjoyed, and I love the book. So it means a lot. It means a lot.
Well, can I just say that's not true? She's done a huge amount to make this book what it is. So
Wow.
Honestly, I couldn't have done it without you. So
I love it. And it is so, that is what is so uniquely special, isn't it, about this award, that actually quite often the editors are the unsung heroes. And we'll talk a little bit about the role of an editor in a bit, and we'll talk about how you work together on this book. But first, Christine, I would love if you could describe your debut, this book, to our viewers, for those that haven't read it yet, and they will be reading it. It's absolutely brilliant. What's the elevator pitch for Ellie Peli is Brown?
So Ellie Plays Brown is basically, it's a kind of coming of age romantic comedy that's set to a kind of original kind of pop soundtrack. So it's about a girl who she's 15 years old and she's sort of taking her GCSEs, and she's somebody that, as the title tells you, she's brown, but she's living in a majority kind of white community. And because of that, she's sort of spent a lot of her time sort of trying to be invisible, trying to kind of melt into the background, because she's worried that if people notice her, they're going to notice her for the wrong reasons. And it's going to be because, she's different. So she spends a lot of time just trying to kind of pretend that she's not really there. And she kind of gets to this point in her life where she's about to take her exams. And she suddenly thinks, I just really want somebody to see me. She just has this kind of moment. And it's partly because there's this new boy that started at school, and she feels this real kind of connection with him, and she's never felt that way about anybody before. But that's kind of complicated by the fact that he's going out with her best friend. And it's partly because, this new teacher has started at school who thinks that, Ellie should stop pretending to be invisible and start kind of embracing what makes her kind of special and different. And it's partly because she's sort of told this big lie. She's told this lie to kind of her family and her school and her friends. And it's there as this kind of ticking time bomb in the background of when everybody's going to kind of find out what it is that she's done. So that's kind of Ellie in a nutshell, really. It's a romantic comedy, and it's about all the kind of trials and tribulations of just growing up, really.
I honestly absolutely loved it. We reviewed it when it first came out, which I think was it May 2022. We reviewed it in paperback, and it was a debut of the month on Love Reading for Kids. And the same, it's funny, it's heartfelt, it's true to life, it's a real page turner. And in spite of us loving it, it hadn't actually reached, sorry to say, it hadn't reached the top of my to be read pile. But once I found out it won the prize, and I ran to grab my copy and dived in, and I read it just over here on my patio in my egg chair with my Spotify very close by, because you just can't read it with, well, you can, but it gives it so much more by reading it with music. And I just think it's an absolute treat. And honestly, since I've read it, my son is 15, has just finished his mock, so he's at a similar stage to Ellie here, and I've been talking about it to all of his friends, pressing it into their hands, to every teenager I know. I honestly loved it. I really loved it. And honestly, huge congratulations. And I'm going to talk about the music element in a minute. But for you, Leah, I'd love to know what it is that excited you about this book when you first got your hands on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a funny one, because actually there were so many things. I think, I could have taken this to an acquisition meeting and talked about just one aspect of this book, and I would have been excited. And I think, first of all, the most obvious thing to me was just Christine's got a voice, and Ellie had a voice, and it was so clear. and engaging, and every single person who read the book in my team, just fell in love with Ellie, and that, first of all, you fall in love with the voice, you fall in love with the character, and that, is when you get goosebumps. And then going into an acquisition meeting, I mean, I think these are kind of, people have got ideas of what an editorial, an acquisition meeting is like for an editor, and people can sense, they can smell kind of fear and sort of insincerity and doubt. And what was so great was I was able to sail into this meeting just so confident that this book had absolutely everything, because also it's got so much humor, but it's dealing with very serious, complicated, complex issues with real nuance and sensitivity. And I think a writer who can do that, you're saying, look, we're buying into this series, but this is investing in a writer for the long term. He's absolutely brilliant. And then when, subsequently, sort of further down the line, I discovered that Christine's also an amazing musician, and at sales conference, there she is playing her piano and singing. And, I mean, it just got better and better. And Christine, you're such a gorgeous, presentable author to, children. I mean, that's lovely too. But just the reading experience of that book, the fact that I was able to present it as this kind of, it's not a frothy summer read, but it could have been a frothy summer read. And it, it was really moving. And I think actually as well, every reader sees himself in Ellie. And again, I feel like that's one of the hallmarks of a truly brilliant book. Is, you may not technically have a lot in common with that character, but you feel like you do. And everyone related to Ellie and saw their own school experience, saw their children's school experience, and I know that Christine wrote the book for many girls who were excluded completely from literature, and that was brilliant. But as I say, the book spoke to so many people, so it was a joy to present.
A slam dunk.
Yeah, it really was. I mean, I'd like to say my job is incredibly difficult, but in that instance, it was really lovely.
That's brilliant. It's really lovely. And for those that who are watching, that maybe aren't aware of the role of an editor, talk us through what that means for us, Leah.
I think an editor can be a bit of a chameleon, because I think you have to adapt your style to the author you're working with. And I think obviously you're responding to the manuscript itself, so you kind of come to the meeting with loads of enthusiasm. I mean, I don't think there's any point in buying a book unless you adore it, but you've got that enthusiasm and you're sort of their biggest cheerleader. But you've also, in those first stages, you probably got questions, this made me think this, is that what you wanted? What's that character up to here, because I can't quite understand their motivation. And so you come, I think, to the author with questions, and I think maybe the way you present those questions changes, and it might be on a phone call, it might be in an editorial letter. I quite like giving people time to process my questions, because I'm honest to a fault. But I like to be honest, but always making sure that someone knows that I've got their back, that I'm really on their side. And so I think it's you sort of want to be asking all of the questions that a reader might have, just to make sure that the story actually stacks up and it's the story that they are intending to tell. Because I think we've all got blind spots and you sort of forget to fill in something. So I think that's the role of an editor, really. It's asking those questions and then ensuring that the story is going to press in the kind of best version of itself, I think, and I think that is kind of quite a hard thing. I think sometimes for editors coming into the industry, we all need to learn. It's not about us. It's about the author. So you may think, you could tell the story in this way, but it's not about that. It's very much the author's telling the story like this. This is the way they want it to be. So respond to that. And I think if you've got concerns, they may well be valid kind of questions, but you've got to be careful, because the author's written it in a certain way for a reason, So I think it helps if you like people, and I like Christine a lot.
It's good. It's good. It worked. Brilliant. Thank you. I think that insight, because not everyone will maybe, quite often talk about the authors, but that real important relationship between the editor and the author is critical. So thanks for sharing that. So Ellie, I mean, Leah mentioned there, she is such a great character. She's a child of first generation immigrant parents who are obsessed with her future and her opportunities and every decision she makes. And she somehow tries to find her way forward, doesn't she?
She does, yeah.
Is there a bit of you in this? Talk to me about Ellie.
I think it's the question that it's probably like the second or third question everybody asks me, probably because Ellie's surname is Pillay and my surname is Pillanigam, so obviously they're very similar. So lots of people ask me if it's autobiographical, and there's definitely a sort of a kernel of truth in that. So we kind of come from the same place in the sense of, you know, I grew up in a majority white community. I had that sort of like first generation immigrant parent thing. It's very much a fictional story, but a lot of those kind of experiences and feelings that she has where she kind of always feels a bit like, you know, outside of things. She doesn't really feel that she fits in with her own family because, you know, they've come from this place. They brought their culture with them. They're very kind of, they're very secure in who they are because they've kind of grown up in a place where they were the majority, and they've moved somewhere and they've brought that kind of sense of self with them. And Ellie has kind of been born in England, and she's sort of like trying to do the right thing by her parents. So there's sort of one version of herself that she's being at home when she's kind of got to sort of live by these traditions and rules. And then there's this other version of herself that she's trying to be at school with her kind of friends. And so she kind of sort of feels like whatever she does, she's not kind of quite fitting in. So I think the story really is about her just finding herself and realizing that actually she kind of doesn't need to fit in. It's kind of like her superpower and her strength is being different and embracing that. And I think that was the sort of story that I wanted to tell. You know, I think we're all still going through that, even as adults, you know, just learn to accept ourselves. So that was kind of, you know, where she came from. So a bit of me, but also just, you know, that struggle that we're all going through of just trying to find ourselves. Yeah, absolutely.
And you're just rooting for her every step of the way as she goes on that journey. And I just thought it's fabulous. I loved her, and I really she just spoke to me, and I thought it was brilliantly done. So she's a music addict, isn't she? She loves music. And music is a huge part of the book, and I'd love to talk about it in two bits if we can. What I've got to say is, as I mentioned before, my Spotify was not far away from me as I read it, and I'm the first to admit, and it's my kids' disgust, I'm rubbish. I love music, but I'm rubbish in knowing who's who and what songs are who. And this was like an education. It was a joy. I played every song mentioned. So in chapter 1, I had the Stones on, and then it was The Cure and Razorlight and Marilyn Monroe and Gloria Gaynor. I just loved it. And it really, as I read, not only was I consumed in the story and the words, but the music enveloped me as well. So talk to me about music and what it means to you, Christine, and why it's such an important part of the book.
Well, I'm so happy to hear that you kind of like actually listened to the music as you went along, because I think like that's part of the book is this kind of thing of like introducing this hopefully new audience to kind of like this music and these songs. I think especially through kind of going to schools and talking to young people now, I realize like what incredibly good taste they all have because they've got access to so much different music now. But yeah, music was just really important to me when I was growing up. I guess like I can't really pinpoint a moment when it happened. I just remember it was like my safe space. So it's kind of that thing that I could listen to a song and it would kind of take me away. And sometimes I felt like songs could sort of describe how I was feeling better than I could. So I was definitely that kid that constantly had headphones on, was constantly kind of pretending that she was in like an MTV music video, just walking around. I felt like it really helped me kind of regulate my emotions. And I think I was also, partly because I did feel like I was a bit different to my peers. One of the things that sort of I kind of really grappled with was like music kind of before my time. So I never really listened to things that other people were listening to at kind of my age. I was always kind of really obsessed with music from sort of like the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, and I've really only begun to appreciate kind of 90s music as I've gotten older. But yeah, it was just, I guess music was just really important to me because it just made me feel like I didn't feel alone. When I was listening to music, I kind of felt really seen. And I still have that now as an adult. And it's hopefully something that I'm kind of passing on to my children, that kind of love of music and how it can make you feel.
I loved it. And actually, I think there's something, a part of the book when it was about, and we'll talk a little bit about Ash later, but obviously her and Ash bond over music, and there was something, as I was writing it, she said, I thought there was a club and I was the only member of it, and it was that sort of, where I just went, that she'd actually, that connection was there. And I think music has got that ability for it to connect people and and bring people together, hasn't it?
Oh, totally. And I think now that you can actually sort of share songs in that way, so you can kind of send somebody something. In my day, it was about mixtapes. So somebody would make you a mixtape, and everything on there, you'd have thought through every single song, and every song meant something to you, and it was supposed to kind of convey this deep message. So, I feel like music is such a powerful kind of connecting force with people, and it can bring such good in the world. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Now, that is the first part of our discussion about music. That in itself, just that would have been awesome. But it gets even better because there is an actual soundtrack to this book. And it's just unbelievable. As you go through the story at the beginning of chapters, there are QR codes peppered throughout the book. And through these QR codes, Ellie's songs are brought to life. And it just adds a whole other depth to the whole experience. Talk to us how this came about.
I'm so happy to hear you say that, because that's exactly what it was designed to do. It was kind of there to really take you into Ellie's head and what she's feeling kind of at that moment in the story. Yeah. I think that, Ellie is a singer-songwriter, and, again, that's how she sort of connects with her feelings. So she listens to music, but she also writes this music, and it's sort of the one place where she feels quite confident and she knows that she can do it. But she's very scared to share it. She's very kind of nervous to kind of share herself. And her music is just this part of her that kind of really helps her to just kind of express who she is, to kind of like, to find sort of some sort of like balm for the soul, whatever she's going through, she can say it in a song, maybe not, articulately in words to friends or family, but when she's sat at that piano, she feels completely herself. So the songs really, I never really intended to write them. It just kind of happened as I was going through the book.
It just sort of happened. I mean, I wish I could just sort of make something like that happen.
Do you see what I have to deal with?
I'm seeing it, Leah. What the heck?
But yeah, just obviously, I kind of was sort of allowing my sort of inner, I really wish I was a pop star out. But it was really fun to write the songs, and really fun to kind of get into that headspace and just really kind of get into how she was feeling. And it really helped me to kind of write the book and give her that voice. So yeah, I love the process of writing the songs. I love the process of making them. And Faber were just so brilliant in the way that they kind of embraced it. And we talked about, how are we going to do this with the QR codes and everything else. So I'm not sure that any other publisher would have been quite so brilliantly kind of accommodating and just really like help me to kind of make my vision come true. Yeah. So I feel so grateful that I found the right home for Ellie and for that music.
So just to be clear, you wrote the songs, you wrote the music, and you performed them.
I did, yes.
So you're just showing off now. That's just honestly, it's just brilliant. I'm not, honestly, everyone, you have to read this book. It's so great. It's so unique. Well. Yeah, please.
I just wanted to mention, there's that fantastic adult novel, Daisy Jones and the Six. I think Christine and I both love that, but it's so hard to write about music in a kind of convincing, engaging, authentic way within fiction. It's really hard. Christine does it so beautifully. And I just think, Ellie Pile deserves her own film or her own Netflix series or something. Like I feel that this novel is so rich, and I've got number 2 as well.
Yes.
It's a whole world. It's a kind of musical sensation. It's just a gorgeous thing. I think I'm in awe of your talent, basically.
It is. It's just so special, and I can't underestimate it. It just feels so different, so unique. And as it says on the cover, welcome to the soundtrack of my life. And it is. It's exactly that. It's just incredible. So wave that book again, Leah, and let's talk about that. So this is Ellie's second outing.
Absolutely.
It's a continuation of Ellie's story. So I always kind of envisaged it as being sort of like 3 books that are over this kind of really big transformative year of having her GCSEs. As you know, your son's doing his mocks at the moment, so it's kind of like 1 term kind of per book. And this book really deals with kind of like what happens when you get what you want. So it's sort of like what happens after Happily Ever After, and it's sort of like this continuation of Ellie's kind of love affair with herself, really, and then the dynamic with her family and her boyfriend and all of those kinds of things. And it's really just about again just this kind of continuation of trying, like, finding yourself and stumbling a bit on the way, because there's no kind of smooth journey. I think that's the thing. As much as we want that kind of perfect ending all the time, sometimes it's just about those kind of peaks and troughs, and it's just about Ellie kind of going, well, I've got all these things I want, and am I really happy, and what do I need, and just continuing to realize that actually that acceptance has to come from within, and it always has to come back to you. And it's not about the boyfriend or whether your parents are happy with you. It's about finding that kind of love and acceptance for yourself, and if you always come back to that, that's kind of the thing that's going to sustain you.
Absolutely. So that's book number 2, everyone. Ellie, and it's Almost in Love, isn't it? And it's out now. And I've already ordered it. So
it's packed with story. I mean, I think that's the other thing that I probably should have said about Christine. There's so much story coming out to her. And I think every author has an Achilles heel, but I've yet to discover yours, Christine, because I just think plot can be, for someone who can do voice and character so well, plot can be a challenge. But with this one, I thought what was really interesting was when I talked to my team, people really wanted to know, does she tackle that other story, the side story, the parents, the grandparents, does she deal with those characters too? And it was really funny how people champion so many other characters in the cast. And as I say, everyone took the first book to their hearts. So it was really, are we going to revisit that family, those friends, that school? What will we learn this time?
And it is, when you think the themes that are covered in this book, because it sort of makes, it could quite easily be, as we said before, frothy. It's about music. Oh my goodness, the themes are so current, they're so real. These are issues that we're all dealing with day in, day out. You've got the navigating the loss, the love, the friendship, the themes of belonging and otherness, and she has racism to deal with in the book. There's mental health, and this whole sort of lack of confidence and belief in herself, and she blossoms, doesn't she, as the book goes on. I mean, wow, how do you cram it all in such a
And also, I think it's such a hopeful and reassuring read, and I think that's what I'm particularly looking for our list, is that teenagers are navigating such a complicated world, and there's so many challenges thrown in their path at the moment, or generally. And I think to show them, yes, it is really hard, but and we see that this is a girl who's navigating all of that, but actually look at what a great time she's also having, and she's discovering herself, and she is great. I think that's lovely, and there's so much hope here. The second book, there's some really meaty themes come through there too, but you'll come away from the reading experience feeling buoyant about the world, which I think is so important.
Yeah, it's just it gives you that warm glow inside that all is going to be okay, that you'll find your
Yeah,
way, that you'll find your space.
I
yeah,
think it is just that's kind of, I wrote it to be reassuring. And I
Yeah,
know that it deals with some really big themes, but I think
yeah,
that's the reality of a lot of teenage experience, and what they're kind of going through and living through is so kind of big and so real. And in
yeah.
many respects, you can kind of look at it and go, wow, that's a lot of themes, but that's reality for so
It
many.
is. It
yeah,
is.
And I think that what Ellie's trying to do is kind of, she's trying to navigate all those things. But also, I think the book fundamentally is that word reassuring. It's supposed to kind of just remind you that
Yeah,
however you feel, it's going to be okay. And that's the book
yeah,
that I needed when I was 15. Just that reassuring moment of going, things are going to be difficult and they're going to get tricky, but you know what? You're okay, and it's going to be okay. So that was kind of, that's what I hope people take away from it anyway.
No, I loved it. I loved it. Now we've got to talk about Ash. I love Ash. I've got a crush on Ash. I know it's really, I shouldn't.
Yeah.
He's he's such a beautiful character, and I think, funnily enough, I was talking about this with a friend earlier about, when you find your people at school, and when you find your tribe, and when you find someone that you connected with, and how important that is. And Ellie has this really incredible bond with Ash, doesn't she? Where did he come from? We just love him.
Okay, so I probably just wrote the high school boyfriend that I wished I'd had. I'm totally honest. I've just written myself my perfect man. It partly came, it's going to sound a bit odd, partly came from my son. So my son, who's like 12, and he's mixed race, and he's kind of it kind of came from this idea that as a character, Ash is mixed race, but he's white passing, and he's sort of is again experiencing a lot of the things that Ellie's experiencing when he's between these kind of two different worlds, these two different cultures. And he's also somebody that's been through some quite big things, and he's grieving somebody. And they really just connect about this fact that, they're both going through something, and they can really only talk to each other about it. And the way that they do that is through music. And I definitely, had that experience with friends when I was at school. Sadly, not boyfriends, but that feeling of just being able to sort of like, share a song and say, this is how I'm feeling in this moment. But Ash really came from this kind of idea of this like really cool kid that you maybe just think on the surface has got it all together, is really popular, is kind of gorgeous, but actually underneath there's this little bit of turmoil. And also he's just kind of going, am I good enough? Am I okay? Because I think that's the reality of all of us, and particularly teenagers. It doesn't matter how much you look like you've got it together. And Ellie really doesn't look like she's got it together, and she kind of hasn't, but he does. And I think when she sees that actually he's insecure and he's got this stuff going on, it sort of makes her realize that maybe she puts people in boxes and assumes that, everyone's doing better than she is, but really everyone's struggling with the same thing. So he kind of came from this idea of, that kind of perfect kid, that actually life isn't quite as perfect as you might assume it is.
No, absolutely. It's just, honestly, thanks so much for chatting to me about this. You can tell I liked it a little bit. So when you found out you'd won, how did it feel, and what would you like to say to each other about this achievement and this win? Start with Christine.
Well, I was in my kitchen. I was working from home, and I got a phone call from Beth, who's the brilliant publicist at Faber. And I thought, oh God, I've not done something. There's something that she's chasing me for. So I picked up the phone, and she was like, oh, I just wanted to, let you know that you've won the Branford Boase. And I literally screamed. I was so excited. And also just really delighted to share it with Leah, because like I said, it's finding that home. It's finding an editor that actually listens to you. And, when you start sort of doing your kind of debut, like PR, and talking to other writers, I realize how lucky I am that actually, I say something, they listen, we do it together. And I feel really honoured to have been picked up by Faber, who I've got so much, have just got such an amazing catalogue of books, but also to share this with the person that kind of made this happen for me and gave me this opportunity to tell this story. It's massive. So I'm very excited, and I'm delighted to be able to, I think it's amazing that this award actually celebrates the relationship between the author and the editor, and actually shows how much editors do to kind of make successful books.
That same question over to you, Leah.
Similarly, I got a phone call from Beth and thought, oh no, what haven't I done? And then to discover that I'd done something really well was lovely, just amazing. And actually it took a while to filter in, I think, because, you know, so often as an editor, you know, the whole point is you're an invisible part of the process. So yeah, it's just been a really lovely secret, you know, because that's the other thing, I've been keeping this secret. So actually, I'm quite looking forward to kind of going off and showing off to my friends or whatever. But I mean, I suppose, you know, I feel like I sort of said this, but Christine, you're such a talent. I mean, I feel so lucky that we're publishing you. The luck is all ours. The, you know, the joy of it is ours. You know, you're the kind of dream come true author. So thank you so much for picking us. You know, we had a launch party for you in the in that old Faber building, and it was just, yeah, it was a magical moment. And I feel like every stage of this has been magical. And even to kind of talking to you the other night, and you've got other ideas, and I'm, you know, I think, wow, okay, it's happening.
I can't wait to see what comes next.
Yeah,
just incredible.
Yeah, watch this.
Wait to hear more about those ideas. Yeah, watch this space. Thank you.
And meanwhile, buy these books.
Yes, exactly. Ellie Pillay is brown, and Ellie is almost in love.
Yes.
The Branford Boase winner for 2023, published by Faber. Christine, Leah, thank you so much for joining me today. It's been an absolute joy.
Thank you.
Congratulations again. All the best. Bye.
Thank you.
Well, wasn't that just an absolute joy? Thank you so much for joining me for that 2023 celebration event for the Branford Boase Award. Huge congratulations to all of the shortlisted authors and editors. What a shortlist it was. And then a special hurrah for Christine Pillay and Leah Thaxton, author and editor of this wonderful, wonderful debut, Ellie Pillay is Brown, published by Faber. Thanks for joining me.